What is going on, everybody out there? Thank you for tuning in today. As always, we will be going live every single day throughout the coronavirus. As it's impacting companies, we want to be able to learn as much as possible, share as much as possible with you. So, with all that being said, let's jump into it. So again, the first thing that I will say is AdBadger is going live as frequently as we can every day, Monday through Friday at 3 o'clock Central, to basically give as much help back to people in our ecosystem as possible. We want to share as much as possible because things are changing so quickly. Every single day matters more than it usually does. And we did not want to wait for that 2-week podcast cycle that we normally follow. Another thing that I'll say too is definitely check out all the replays. You can go to our Facebook page or you can go to YouTube and get replays for all of the Amazon strategies that we are deploying and talking about here. AdBadger customers were fortunate enough. The average AdBadger customer was fortunate enough to see gains over the last sort of 60 days. So towards the end of March was strong for many of our customers. And we want to be sharing some of the tips and tricks and strategies and mindset that is so helpful during this crazy, crazy time. And even though sort of the curve is being generally flattened, the road to recovery is likely going to be long, much longer than it took to get to the peak the first time. So again, we are talking about how to manage PPC on Amazon during a crisis, loan assistance mindset, how we update our bid algorithm to help our customers, all these different things we're talking about. So with all that being said, I know that this stream says that we will have a guest. That guest is unable to make it today. So instead, what I wanted to do is I actually wanted to revisit one thing that we had talked about previously. We talked about this on April 1st, and I wanted to circle back and just cover these things with you. Austin will be on the show next week, next Friday. So really quick, I wanted to touch base on ACOS and how it's changing. I wanted to touch base off conversion rates and how they're changing, cost per click, revenue, and revenue per click. So as your PPC account recovers, one thing to think about is that recovery will be slow. So if you experienced depressed sales, it is likely that it will be slower than you'd like in order as this recovery takes place. That being said, you will likely still not want to turn off your campaigns. Instead, you may want to anticipate a couple weeks of slower sales and anticipate a lower revenue per click. So much of good PPC optimization is actually trying to think about where you're at and then predict what the next few steps looks like. So what that means is if you are anticipating, so some big news came out today, keeping your ear to the ground is pretty important on this. The big news of today is that, for the 30 million, let me double check that number, small businesses in America, 30 million. It's like 28.9 or something. So 30 million small businesses applied. You hopefully applied to it because we talked about it on this show last week, which was the Paycheck Protection Program. And I think the numbers are less than 5% of companies actually got it. And it's actually pretty crazy. Like I'm looking at some news on this, but if you applied for the Paycheck Protection Program, you 95% chance did not get the Paycheck Protection Program because I just searched small business in America to verify that number, and the news that popped up, the news headlines, the coronavirus crisis exposes how America really feels about small businesses. 7.5 million small businesses are at risk of closing. Small business loan money runs out. Many approved businesses waiting for. There's no excuse for how the coronavirus aid was handled with small businesses. You hear stories of companies that are quite large, almost some, potentially publicly traded, receiving huge amounts of money from the Paycheck Protection Program, leaving many smaller companies out to dry. Banks were incentivized to give larger sums to larger companies. But basically, the reason I mention that is because if you use that information and think about that, so many small businesses not receiving it who potentially thought they were, there's probably going to be a depressed conversion rate happening over the coming days, week. So you want to monitor that quickly. This is why we released COVID-19 mode in our Bids by Badger algorithm, so that when you are, I would have that turned on, because basically if we're anticipating some conversion rate decreases, the better you can react to that as it's actually happening, the better. So that is where, why we built COVID-19 response mode, because it just reacts much, much quicker to things. So probably conversion rates are going to dip over the coming days, week, and that can be helpful to you. This is how Ad Badger helps, sort of helping to predict what's going to happen, helping to predict all of those, helping to predict what's going to happen, helping to predict and then take action on that. So with all that being said, I think that's it for now, in the sense of you always want your bids to be responsive. And if you're anticipating a time of depressed conversion rates, you'll want to do that so that you don't have huge ACoS swings. And that's exactly what sort of the battle drum of Ad Badger is. It's like, what actions do we have to do to control where our ACoS is and to control where we want our ACoS to be? And a lot of that revolves that taking proactive action and being reactive as quick as you possibly can. Reactivity and the pace at how you can react is actually a competitive advantage. So I would take good advantage of doing that to be sure that it sort of stays where you want it. So your ACoS stays where you want it. And the way that you can best control your ACoS is with bids. That's why we have our bid algorithm, crisis response mode, to sort of speed that up as things change so rapidly now, faster than they normally do. And the other way to keep your ACoS under control really well during this time is just targeting. A lot of times, when you look at an ACoS for an auto or a category targeting or a broader phrase, what you're actually looking at is the pooled aggregation of the ACoS of all those different things that you showed up for. So, a phrase, you could be showing up for dozens and dozens of things that you may not even be aware of. In fact, you are not aware of them unless they get a click. So a lot of things that you just aren't aware of. So with that being said, what you're actually looking at in that ACoS is a pooled metric. And when you change the bids on that, you're changing the bids for all of them. So one thing you can sort of think about is tightening up your targeting during this time. So not being as loose with your targeting. So, this is always true. You should always be trying to graduate up, trying to move things from broad phrase, trying to use a tool like Ad Badger's positive keyword tool, or be inside your search term report so that you can find things and then put them into your account. So I hope that makes sense. So my strategy for making it through this time of economic recovery is going to be bid optimization, as always, and targeting management. Clearing out some things that were, sort of more research based, like a broad, because it helps you find other things that are slightly to the left and right of that keyword, dampening that down, and getting more focused on tighter targeting, like exact and product targeting. And I think that is it for today. I hope everyone out there is staying safe, staying healthy. Don't forget, we will be going live every day at 3 o'clock Central. And if you're watching the replay, be sure to drop a comment, because we do check it out afterwards. Have a good one, everybody. And I'll see you inside the Badger Den.